There you go. 4-punch, 5-punch, 6-punch combination. Body shot, bang, 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 bang.
Telling him not to counterpunch.
Boom! Will Rackman get up?
Iron. You're going through all the instructions. This is for the championship of the world. I expect a tough, clean fight. Protect yourself at all times. Any questions from the challenger?
Welcome back, fight fans, to the Fight City Podcast, the official podcast for thefightcity.com. Continuing with the weekend that was series, we had an exciting round of matchups this past weekend on ESPN and DAZN. Today, I'll be joined by Kevin, who was able to experience the matchups with me here. Kevin, how are you doing?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me back on.
Excellent. So we're going to dive right in. The first matchup I would like to discuss would be the 2022, well, the Fight City, officially the Fight City's 2022 Fighter of the Year, the young 24-year-old, the Jesse Bam Bam Rodriguez, defeating Juan Francisco Estrada. This young man does not seem to be stopping or slowing down whatsoever. Mind you, he is 24, so I'm super excited to see where he continues to go with his pugilistic career. But getting to it, Jesse Bam Rodriguez scored a stunning upset over Juan Francisco Estrada in their WBC World Super Flyweight title fight at the Footprint Center in Phoenix, Arizona. Estrada, who hadn't fought since December of 2022, may have been affected by the long layoff. Despite his experience advantage, he was unable to withstand the young fighter's speed and power. Juan Francisco Estrada entered the fight against Jesse Bam Rodriguez with an impressive 8-fight winning streak. His last defeat came over 6 years ago, in February 2018, when he lost a majority decision to Sissaket, I always butcher that one, Sorungvasai. Estrada later avenged that loss in 2019. Prior to the bout with Rodriguez, Estrada's record stood at 44 wins, 3 losses, and 28 knockouts. 24-year-old Rodriguez, moving up from flyweight, showcased his exceptional talent and power against the more experienced 34-year-old Estrada. Despite Rodriguez's control, Estrada, who's 34, did manage to drop Rodriguez in the 6th round with a well-timed straight right hand. However, Rodriguez recovered quickly and continued his assault. The fight came to the dramatic conclusion. Rodriguez landed 2 left hook body shots that sent Estrada crumpling to the canvas. Referee stopped the fight, declaring Rodriguez winner by technical knockout. I will say Rodriguez did acknowledge later, acknowledge the effectiveness of his body shots, right? And then we'll dive into, obviously, the tactics used in the fight. And the victory marks a significant milestone in Rodriguez's career as he dethroned the reigning champion Estrada and claimed the WBC World Super Flyweight title. So this just obviously solidifies Rodriguez's status as a rising star, considering especially in the lower weight divisions, which don't get a lot of attention here in the States and stateside compared to the international realm of boxing. But man, there's just nothing slowing this guy down. Kevin, what did you make of the fight itself?
Oh, the fight itself. If you were trying to get into the sport of boxing, this is probably one that you should watch. It had everything from general ringmanship, footwork, defense, offense. Just it had everything that you wanted when you're trying to learn the basics. And these guys, being the pugilists that they are, Estrada, a veteran of the game. I remember when actually his 2 fights with Rung Visayas, when he lost and then when he avenged that loss back in 2019. It's pretty cool to see somebody at his age at 34. I know that's, when I say it, I think it's still young, but in the sport of boxing itself, that's kind of like you're at the tail end of your career there because, if you're an old man in a young man's game, that's probably somebody you should be learning from. To fight somebody 10 years as junior, I'm going to give props to Estrada. Unfortunately for him, Bam Rodriguez just had the recipe for disaster for him, and he ended up kissing the canvas last night. But for, Jesse Bam Bam Rodriguez, he showed impressive grit. He didn't lay off the gas the whole fight, and that was very impressive to me. Especially, I believe it was around 4, hit him with a 4-piece. And put Estrada down on the canvas. That was really impressive to me. And then, as you said earlier, the 2 body shots that ended the fight, that was very impressive as well. And I feel like it was probably the first shot that ended him. and the second one was just natural instinct to throw, but I feel like he was feeling the first shot already when he started falling.
Yeah, Jesse Rodriguez, man, and Estrada. Well, Estrada, one is a legend, 34, and with the career that he has had, hopefully, he'll sell off into the sunset. However, he does have the right to call for the rematch. They did have a rematch clause, but seeing these two pure pugilists in the ring itself, you're right. Anyone who's starting to learn the sport needs to watch, especially Jesse Rodriguez. This guy just does no wrong. It seems like he is just so effective. It doesn't hurt that in his training camp, he is also under the watchful eye of Roman Chocolatito Gonzalez. And so he was actually helping Jesse get ready for this match. And he's also training for a comeback fight on July 20th at the end of next month. And so having him in his corner, in his training camp, right, you're only going to learn so much, because Roman Chocolatito is a pound for pound top 10, I think, out of our generation. But getting to the fight itself, Rodriguez, obviously he ended the fight with two powerful left hooks straight to Estrada's body, and then that's what ultimately ended the fight. But he was really focused on an effective body attack to make sure to slow down, because he already knew, like, the game plan is Estrada's older. He's 34, got a whole decade on Rodriguez. So you don't want him slipping away. So he's much older. Those legs don't function like they used to. Wear the guy down. I know he did. He had his jab was really consistent. A lot of straight lefts with uppercuts. And so then that pushed Estrada back to the ropes, right? And that's going to force Estrada to sit on his defense. Compy box stats, we all love statistics today. I think really capture Rodriguez's dominance. He landed 156 of 371 punches. That's 42% compared to Estrada's 95 of 368 punches to his 26%. So 42 to 26%. That's insane. And then obviously the 7th round onslaught is where they didn't leave it to the judges. Again, this is the red light district of sports. Jesse Rodriguez's performance, I think, hopefully will outshine the issue of those scorecards. However, I do agree with those who are calling for some type of investigation to be conducted. This was Rodriguez's night, and these judges, for some odd reason, one of them had it at a draw. Others were looking at Estrada was up. I just don't understand how that is the case. But then Rodriguez, just a younger guy in this firefight. And so his speed and his power and, Rodriguez's technical prowess is just not to be overlooked. Very young, very strong, filling out into his adult body. And so I think we're going to have a lot more of Rodriguez in our feed, especially since, he is under the tutelage of Roman Chocolatito Gonzalez. And he has the skills that pays the bills. I just don't think there's anyone else out there. I mean, I'm sorry, there are, but I think Jesse Rodriguez, if any coach aren't using his tapes as film study, I'm not going to say you're doing it wrong, but it probably would help to put that in your toolkit, because Jesse Rodriguez just is the man. But taking a look after this bout, who are the next possible opponents for Bam Bam? Kevin, who's the first person that comes to mind?
That's a tough question. I know they were talking about a dream bout against Inoue at some point in the near future. That'd be awesome to see. If I was a betting man, though, I'd probably put it on Inoue. I think I'm being just biased there, but I don't see anyone beating him for a long time. Now, somebody currently, you have the fight with Kazuto Ioka versus Fernando Martinez coming up July 7th. Now, Ioka holds the WBA Super Flyweight belt championship belt, and Martinez owns the IBF Super Flyweight title. Between the two of those, he could face possibly the winner between the whoever wins that results. Now, I'm not too familiar with either two of them, but like you said earlier, I don't see anybody beating Bam Bam Rodriguez right now. He just showed too much poise and technical ability especially last night against a veteran like Estrada. One thing that I caught interest in was it was a southpaw versus orthodox matchup, and usually those fights are kind of slow paced at first because the first few rounds are still trying to feel each other because it's such a different angle. But right from the get go, they blasted right towards each other, and it was nonstop action through the 7 rounds. So I just don't see anybody beating Bam Bam at this current weight class at the current moment.
Yeah, I wonder if that was part of the game plan. The more I think about it, because I do remember turning on the first round, but I got into the first round late, and it looked like it was already the 4th round by the amount of action that I was watching. But no, you're right. Kazuto Ioka versus Fernando Martinez. That'll take place on July 7th. And so they're unifying their belt between the WBA and the IBF super flyweight titles. There is the WBO title, which Kosei Tanaka holds, but he has a fight later in July, at the end of July 20th. And so that one's going to be out for a little bit in determination of Bam Bam setting up that matchup. There's always the conversation regarding Roman Chocolatito Gonzalez. However, Bam Bam has stated in the past that he would not fight his friend. I do love how he has been kind of taken under the wing of by Chocolatito. I think that is great. You know, you just have this mentor that is kind of leading him into greatness. But then obviously Juan Francisco Estrada can always call for the rematch, and I think he is looking to conduct the rematch. But you mentioned the Naoya Inoue, and that is Bam Bam did downplay that one. It's kind of a fantasy pairing, but he needs to dominate thoroughly his own super flyweight division first before considering Naoya Inoue. Inoue is the guy kind of now that, like, if I was a professional fighter, I'd be saying Canelo's name for the payday, you know, just to get more headline clicks. I do rightfully feel that Jesse Rodriguez needs to get more attention. He was the Fight City's 2022 Fighter of the Year due to the spectacular performance that he was conducting himself just 2 years ago at the age of 22, bumping up division on like an 8 days notice, and then even dominating in that performance. I'd have to go back through my notes to take a look at who that fight was against. I believe it might have been Quadras. But regardless, you know, kudos to Jesse Bam Rodriguez conducting a decisive victory. And again, hopefully an investigation's opened up into those scorecards at the time of the call fight stoppage. But now moving on over to the ESPN card, Teofimo Lopez, the showman, is the name that we've kind of given him, or he's given himself. Teofimo Lopez at the 140-pound division. Decisions Claggett. Okay, so Teofimo Lopez dominated the fight statistically, landing a whopping 315 punches to Claggett's 60. Here's the kicker. Despite this lopsided punch count, Lopez never came close to scoring a knockdown, let alone a knockout against a fighter who was stepping up to world-class level for the first time. And that's nothing against Claggett. I guess there is a little bit of steam that's kind of left me a little bit regarding Teofimo. I do like Teofimo Lopez. There's just something, I know he's now in the throes of, like, he's now more reflective. He's not as, like, he doesn't like beat himself up after performances. But, you know, trying to put things into perspective, I guess, Lopez, who's now 21-1 with 13 KOs, he was a powerhouse at 135 pounds. But since he moved up to 140, he's only managed 1 knockout in 5 fights, and that was against journeyman Pedro Campa back in August of 2022. Throughout the fight, Lopez found himself with his back to the ropes, fending off the hard-charging Claggett. Claggett's level was kind of clear throughout this. He's not the top tier candidate, so there was some questionable footwork. He was just kind of moving forward and throwing punches. I know for him, he has a huge output. And so I guess that was the idea going into this matchup was like, all right, push Teofimo, right? With his volume. So credit where it's due. Claggett's heart can't be questioned. He went the distance and even managed to bust up Lopez over his both eyes, landing more shots than anyone expected. Now, I've kind of wondered, did Lopez underestimate Claggett? And so taking a look back, 2 performances, he was on the wrong end, not wrong end unjustifiably, but he was the upset of the year when he lost to George Kambosos. And he also barely won against Sandor Martin in his second bout at 140 pounds. But considering he did bounce back, he dominated Josh Taylor last summer to win the lineal championship for 140 pounds. But then in February, he did struggle against Jermaine Ortiz. And then he also got booed in that fight. I do remember he wasn't able to cut off the ring as effectively. It's just kind of like he was chasing Jermaine around the ring. And then so in choosing Claggett for this fight, Top Rank did offer him fights with Kenny Sims, Elvis Rodriguez, and Ray Muratalla. But Lopez chose Claggett. I know post-fight he said, yo, Claggett's really tough. I chose him for a reason. He's like a triathlon guy. Like, he has endurance, and he is tough. But I guess for me, myself, it's kind of like the performance wasn't quite where I thought it was going to be. I thought it would be a little bit more razzle-dazzle because he is the showman. He did clean counterpunches, but the knockout just never materialized. He connected with right uppercuts, left hooks, right on Claggett's chin. So again, testament to Claggett's chin. He did stun him in round 8, and he did pour more punishment in round 9. But Claggett, just very, very tough. Iron heart, iron chin, and he just kept pushing forward. Kevin, what did you make of the performance?
I don't know where to begin with Teofimo Lopez. He was offered 3 opponents that if he had beaten them would definitely propel him for more validity in fighting at 147. You said Kenny Sims Jr., who beat Elvis Rodriguez. Was it, I don't know how long ago that was now. Elvis Rodriguez actually fought on the undercard for this fight, showing heart and grit against his opponent. I can't remember his opponent's name off the top of my head right now. Ray Muratalla, also very caliber opponent that Tio could have faced, but he chose Steve Claggett, I think, for a particular reason. Like you said, he's a forward. He it seems like he purposely wants to fight over his front foot. He's just a hard charger, bites down on his mouthpiece, and just charges nonstop. I'm a little shocked and surprised that, not for Tio landing 315 shots that he had thrown, but they surprisingly said that Steve Claggett only landed 60 out of everything that he threw. If he only landed 60 and did that much damage to Teofimo's face, I'm just questioning that statistic. But as you could tell in the post fights, Teofimo Lopez was touched up more damage than we're used to seeing, especially for such a slick counterpuncher. As we saw last night, he was able to land that rear right uppercut beautifully every time Steve Claggett stepped in. Performance-wise, yeah, I know he said that he to us it may look like he can still fight at 140, but he keeps selling that he can't anymore, really. Like, he has to bump with the 147. But we saw what he was doing at 135, right? He had monstrous power, slick, fast. He'd land it like that, lights out. He bumped up to 140, dominant performance over Josh Taylor at 140, right? He beat the man at 140 beautifully. Counter punches, just beat the bricks off him, but did not produce a knockout. His last few fights at 140, we've like you said, like he can't produce a knockout. And for him to think that he can go up to 147 and fight those guys, he's definitely going to have to learn how to actually be real technical boxing wise, right? Like, he's going to have to learn actually how to cut the ring off, even though I don't think he'll be cutting the ring off again. He'll be chasing anybody down at 147. He'll be the small man in the division. Credit where credit is due. He lasted all 12 rounds against a caliber opponent that was just hard charging him the whole time. And at one point I was going to question his conditioning. I thought he was going to get tired in the later rounds, but he kept to it. You could even see it in the championships rounds. He was smiling at Steve. I don't know if he was smiling and acknowledged, like, hey, this is good work, or like he was kind of getting nervous there. But I think he should honestly stay at 140. I don't think he should even try to take a chunk out of 140. I think that's asking too much.
What was the stat that you were questioning?
It said that Steve Claggett only had landed 60 total.
Oh, gotcha. Okay.
Yeah, I'm still a little kind of shocked at that. Impressive for Teofimo to land 315, but I felt like Claggett landed more, especially when you see the damage to Tio's face.
Yeah, I guess a lot of the glove blocks, catching in on the arms, the elbows, he was, he must have off of those.
I mean, he does utilize the Philly shell. And at first I was like, this guy needs to quit doing that, but it seems like he's progressively getting better with it at each fight. So I might have been seeing it wrong with how he utilized the defense.
Right. I know you mentioned he was smiling in championship rounds. I think that's just due to, Claggett didn't have a lot to offer in terms of a powerhouse. So he didn't really feel threatened at all. Mind you, the work from Claggett utilizing the jab and some of the smaller punches were connecting on Lopez's eyes, obviously, because at the end of the fight, he even cracked a joke about it. It was like, this is what we do in the fight game. Like, I'm not concerned about the way my face looks, but it was like, dude, your eyes are pretty swollen. Considering that Claggett isn't known for his knockout ability. But I guess he did touch him up enough with especially utilizing the jab. I will say I'm impressed by Teofimo. He threw a whopping 946 punches throughout the fight. So his volume's definitely there. He did land 42.9% of the power punches. Mind you, he is known for his counterpunching ability. And so, right, like, those obviously were the most impactful punches of the fight. But even at 140, I mean, again, I've already given credit to Claggett. Like, he's just a workhorse. Like, he's tough. But Teofimo, like, I know he said that he was thinking about moving up to 147, but I'm like, man, you didn't really necessarily stop. You didn't stop the guy like people were kind of like looking for. I mean, the idea was he was supposed to win this fight, which he did. But I just don't know how well that power translates for him going up. Obviously, the combinations, he was really effective, specifically in the early rounds. And then he did land a lot of good body shots, which obviously would have worn down Claggett over the course of the fight. But Lopez landing a career high of 315 punches, that's impressive. Again, a lot of these stats, like they are impressive, but I'm really kind of questioning, like, how would these stats have compared had he not chosen Claggett? If he had chosen a very dangerous fighter, as in Kenny Sims Jr., who did defeat Elvis Rodriguez, and then or Elvis Rodriguez, Kenny Sims, or Ray Muratalla, right? I don't think these stats would have been the same per se, right? Because those guys, all three of those guys, are very, very dangerous. But like, looking now, he did what he was supposed to do, I guess. In summary, he did what he was supposed to do against an opponent that was that he chose. But now with that, his more reflective experience, as much as I am excited or happy that he isn't very doom and gloom like he used to be about his career, he knows he calls himself the showman. He even came out in like a white tux. He did the very Miami style, like flashy, which is good for Teofimo and I guess his psyche. But I am a little concerned. Like he said, he's considering moving up to 147 pounds. I just don't know if that is the best decision. His father even says maybe that's not where we're looking at going next, just because those guys in that division, they're a lot bigger. My son will be pretty much outsized. And how well will he do? Right? He called out Pitbull Cruz, and then he also called out Crawford. Which, if your father's he's the fighter. He felt good. Like, it was post fight. I don't know, Kevin. What do you think?
Oh man, calling out. So yeah, like we agree, 147 is probably not in his wheelhouse. I'm all for the mentality of like, hey, if you believe it, you can achieve it. If he really believes it, and he always says when he puts his mind to something, he's going to go with it. If he thinks he can do something on 147, by all means. But I think he just needs to be realistic. There's always some type of realist mentality with it, though. You got to realize, like, you're going to be the smaller guy. Sure, you're fast, but like you were saying, like, I mean, he did slow Steve Claggett down, but the other name that he had mentioned, Pitbull Cruz, right there, that's Steve Claggett on steroids and with a lot more technical ability. I don't think he's going to slow down Pitbull Cruz, especially like somebody like Tank Davis. When they fought, he didn't slow Pitbull Cruz down, and he hits. I mean, hence the nickname Tank. He was throwing the kitchen sink at him. So I don't know. I think Tio, hey man, get your bag with Pitbull Cruz and see how you can do again. Now, if you beat Pitbull Cruz, by all means, sky's the limit. You jump straight for 147, as long as it's like a dominating performance. But after last night's performance, I don't see him I don't see him really dominating Pitbull, and definitely not dominating Terrence Crawford. I know the boxing community after that that performance, they're telling him to leave Terrence Crawford's name out of his mouth. And that would be hard too, because Terrence Crawford's already jumping up to 154. He's trying to do his own thing with legacy. So, but I do love, and right now, the whole thing in boxing of everyone's trying to jump up, I don't know how many weight classes to secure the bag, make a name for themselves, trying to make history. You got Terrence Crawford going after Canelo. I remember Canelo at one point saying he was going to fight at heavyweight. So I do like that, but sometimes you just got to be a little more realistic with some of these call outs.
I think the part that's just kind of bothering me, I guess, the most is in terms of like Teofimo talking about, like, I'm doing it for, I'm going to quote him here. We don't dodge nobody. I just want the best. I don't want to fight the best so I can collect more legacy. But then out of the entire decisions for this fight, you chose, and again, not really knocking Steve Claggett, but there was a list of guys that Top Rank kind of threw at you: Elvis Rodriguez, Kenny Sims, Ray Muratalla, and you chose Steve Claggett, which out of that whole group collectively had the least amount of weapons to be used against you. So I'm really not buying the whole legacy thing here.
I agree. Elvis Rodriguez was a top prospect for Top Rank a couple years ago before his first loss. Kenny Sims, he's definitely a threat, and I don't see a lot of people calling his name out because he beat Elvis Rodriguez, and everyone had Elvis Rodriguez as a favorite during that fight. And same with Ray Mortala. Like, I don't know why out of all four people in front of him, he just chose Steve Claggett. And I think it's just for the fact that Steve Claggett's, style to make fights was his style was the best setup for him to be dominant. Elvis Rodriguez, any of the other three, it would have been difficult for Tio.
Yeah, no, I agree. He did defeat Jermaine Ortiz, and I actually really was looking forward to that fight, but that just kind of was a snoozer as well. But he definitely
sold my fight. I'm sorry. I was just thinking, I sold that fight to so many people that don't really know boxing, saying, watch that fight when he fought Ortiz. I was like, it's going to be a great show, because I think Ortiz has a lot to offer. But yeah, like you said, it was just it's kind of lackluster.
Right. And he needed to show out, essentially. And then he just kind of didn't against Claggett. But calling out Crawford, that's hyperbole. That's like people saying they want to fight Inoue or Canelo, or anyone saying the same thing about Crawford, right? You just want the big name. And then the Pitbull Cruz one is actually pretty realistic, but Bob Arum earlier in the week was eyeing a WBO welterweight, eyeing the WBO welterweight interim champion Brian Norman Jr. as maybe Teofimo's first step up in at 147 pounds, which, based on this performance, I'm going to advocate no, because Brian Norman, I think, actually might hurt Teofimo, because the dude is really strong, and he won his last fight decisively to win that interim championship. That was actually the really first time that I had seen Brian Norman Jr.'s perform in the pro ranks, and I'm talking mollywop his last opponent. And I'd rather, and also Teofimo bumping up, like he's just kind of jumping through divisions, it seems, from 135. Obviously, he was dominant at 135, but then going to 140, not having a really big performance at 140, and now saying, I'm going to go to 147. Mind you, if the weight is an issue, sure, but according to his dad, it doesn't seem to be. And I don't know, he didn't seem that weight drained on weigh-in day. But Teofimo, I think it's really funny, his relationship with Bob Arum, because he's not very shy he doesn't hide it, saying kind of like, I'm your last superstar, and so I'm gonna basically, it's me calling the shots, or unless who else do you have on your roster? Which I'm thinking that's probably not the best thing to say to Bob Arum, but hey, Teofimo's Teofimo. Like, this isn't the most outlandish stuff he's ever said. And then obviously, like, when we think of outlandish things, I think of like Ryan Garcia. So I don't know. Teofimo, hey, kudos to you. You got the job done. I don't know if I want to call you the showman, but and again, I am a Teofimo Lopez. I do like Teofimo Lopez. I think he has the skills to be great. But right now, the past, if I were to judge someone based on their last performance, this one just didn't really do it for me. He did what he was supposed to do, and so hopefully, if he does go up to 147, maybe a softer touch is necessary, but I'm just not seeing it right now.
Yeah, I mean, I think we're still just riding on this nostalgic feeling that when he beat Lomachenko, right? And then we saw his demise at the hands of George Kambosos, and which everyone said was a fluke, but I mean, that was Kambosos' night.
Yeah.
I'm still a fan of Teofimo. Yeah, I think it's a little weird that you gave yourself the nickname the Showman, but he was, before that it was the Takeover, and he was taking over. He was just knocking out everybody in spectacular fashion. He was like the Conor McGregor of boxing a couple years ago, right? He'll tell you what round he was going to put him to sleep, and that was that. But yeah, I don't know. I think he needs to regroup. He needs to sit down with his team, and he needs to rethink, strategize like his next few opponents to line them up. Because yeah, like you said, I don't think he's really making a name for himself at 140. I mean, he did beat Josh Taylor in spectacular fashion, big comeback fight for him. But how many fights has that been since now? And it's nothing's been materialized since.
I mean, the idea though is, I guess if he did bump up to 147, you could float out the idea of like Devin Haney, who's a free agent, and just imagine getting the two of them at press conferences. Is they're going to do they're going to sell the fight essentially, right? Considering that Devin Haney needs something, considering this whole Ryan Garcia situation where he is now back to undefeated status. Garcia is now saying that he is. He's retired. And then he even entertained, maybe I'll go fight in the UFC, whatever. But then if he does wait out that 1-year ban and doesn't retire, I mean, you could get Teofimo Lopez versus Ryan Garcia. Again, think the press conferences. Those guys can really sell a fight. And so I guess those are two ideas that are just kind of out there. But in terms of people right now in the moment at 147 pounds, I just don't see Teofimo bumping up there and doing well at the current moment. But then again, hey, weirder things have happened in the sport. But, kudos to Teofimo. Like I said, you did what you had to do, and hopefully we'll see what's next for him come September. That's all we got today. So thank you again, fans, for taking a listen to the Weekend That Was series. And Kevin, we look forward to having you back.
Thanks for having me on again. I appreciate it.
Hey everyone, it's Jeff here. If you like today's episode, don't forget to hit the subscribe button and check out all of our other content on thefightcity.com. The website link can be found in our show notes. Till next time.